Yes, 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 yes. Late nights at Warner Park. We are back. CPL 2021, episode 3. I'm Ashel St. Patrick Hewitt, one half of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. And of course, I've got with me the great statistician himself, Static. Before we continue, if you're watching this live or if you're watching this however many hours afterwards or tomorrow or whatever it might be, as always, go down in the comments below on the YouTube description. Click the link. It'll take you to Static's handle to follow him on everything cricket-wise. But in particular, if you want to understand T20 cricket, Static is your guy. Static, how you doing?
All good, man. How are you?
Excellent. Great to have you back. Let me just deal with people who are going to say, where were you guys? You said you were going to do this every single day. If you remember when I put this out there and I said, yeah, we're going to do this show, I said, maybe it will be every single day. Oh, 1 second. I'm just going to charge this up. Are we good? Yeah. I said, maybe this will be every single day. And then what Static and I discussed is that it didn't make sense to do this at 11 o'clock on the Saturdays and Sundays because the games happen differently. On the Saturdays and Sundays, they're back to back. The last one finishes somewhere between 11 to 11:30, and we just thought it's too late to really be trying to fit in a show. Maybe at 11:30, maybe at midnight. So we knew that by the end of Sunday, it was kind of like the end of the first section, the end of the bit of the first phase, and that we'd try and wrap this up on Monday, which we obviously is a rest day ahead of going again. So. Just shout out to say hello to some people. We see you, Mass88. We see you, Renell. How you doing, Renell? Long-time follower. Love to see you on. So what we're going to do, because it's a rest day today for the players, and quick plug, we just recorded episode 49 of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast featuring Shay Hope. And I'm telling you lot now, you're going to want to watch that one. I just told Static before I press record, something that was said on the show. You're going to want to watch this one when it comes out. But anyways, what we're going to do is rather than the 5 key talking points for the show today, we're going to do this one slightly different. We're going to run through each particular team of the tournament. Most teams have played 3 games. I think only 2 teams have played 2 games, which is Jamaica and St. Lucia. But we've seen enough. Sorry. We've seen enough. Sorry, I was just messing around there. We've seen enough of some teams to establish what's kind of going on for them right about now. So let's get straight into it. That's a really, really long-winded intro. Static, before I bring up the first talking point, just in general, what has been your views of CPL 2021?
No, I think the pitches in general have been better than last time. I think last time, once we got through the first week, the pitches were already completely dead. But this time, I think we're seeing scores around 150, 160. They're not completely flat pitches. If bowlers bowl well, there's something in it. And there's also the short boundaries. So if bowlers do miss their mark, there's runs to be had. So I think overall, it's been a pretty balanced tournament. There's been a mix of the big guys stepping like Pollard, Russell, etc. But there's also Rutherford, Drakes, the more fringe guys stepping up. So it's nice to see there's something in there for everyone.
Yeah, I think I'd go along with that. And I think the biggest thing that everyone should be happy about in this tournament is that TKR don't look like they are world beaters in this tournament. That doesn't mean TKR won't win it. I'm not saying that, but what I am saying is this is a far more competitive tournament. Like, further to what you're saying, Static, I think everyone knew after the first week TKR are going to win this. In fact, we knew it before the game, before it even started. But the point was, within the first week, it was like, well, who's going to play TKR in the final? Because it was that obvious. Whereas after the first week or first 3 days, whatever it's been of CPL thus far, it is not obvious who is going to win this tournament at this particular juncture. We couldn't even tell you who's going to make the top 4, really and truly. But what we've decided to do is we've for each team, we've got a talking point for each team. We're going to kind of do it that way. And then obviously if you're watching and you're in the live, throw in your comments as usual, so on and so forth. So let's go with I'm going to go in order of the table thus far. Okay, so the team at the top right now are actually St. Kitts. Let's start there. St. Kitts, 3 games, 3 wins. at the top of the tournament, Static, you and I had said they've got the best batting lineup in the tournament. What's been frightening to see with St. Kitts is that for the last 2 games, Gale's not even played, which, whatever people might think about Chris Gale, in the context of the St. Kitts team, it should weaken them because there's no obvious replacement for like someone in terms of Chris Gale's effectiveness, but it hasn't. It hasn't. Even in the game against Guyana, whatever people might think about that game, and we won't get into that just yet, people were still stepping up. No matter how low it got down, people were still stepping up to make a mark and have an impact. 3 from 3 Static. Are they the favourites?
Yeah, if you remember what I told you on the first show or even pre-tournament, I said if TK are favourites this time, then St. Kitts are the most likely challengers. And given how TKR have started and how St. Kitts have started, they're probably now favourites going forward because, like we said on the opening show, it's not one man who's driving their batting. We've seen Evan Lewis step up. We've seen Devin Thomas step up. We've seen Shafane Rutherford has hit 250s in 3 games. Dwayne Bravo seems to have rediscovered some batting form. There's Fabian Allen, who's just faced a handful of balls. We're sure he's going to come step up at some point. I don't think Gale's injury is very serious. So once he slots back in, he probably has a point to prove as well. So overall, I think there's enough guys stepping up at some points down. It's almost like how TKR were last year, right? At one point, it was Lendl Simmons. When Simmons was not in form, it was probably Monroe, Narayan, etc. So I think they're structured similarly. It's not one match winner, but it's an entire team that's coming together and doing well. But it's not just that. They've got Dominic Drakes, who's been consistently performing now. Paul Van Meekeren has stepped up in the last game.
Yep.
Bravo hasn't even bowled really well so far.
And that was going to be the thing I asked you. I was literally just going to say to you, do you have any concerns about their bowling? But then you've kind of just hit the nail on the head for me. Bravo hasn't even really turned up yet. And their bowling is finding, like Dominic Drakes has turned up fully. I think Van Meekeren I've never even seen before. You told me about him, but I've been quietly impressed with him. And certainly I think the majority Caribbean batsmen have found him difficult to... He's not a bowler you can just smash to all parts. He's a much better bowler than that. Fawad is Fawad. Like, we know what he can do. Certain players in CPL, they've been there long enough that you just know what they're going to do. I do have a few concerns about Sheldon. And those concerns stretch enough for me to say it could even impact on him playing for the West Indies in the World Cup. But how do you see Sheldon, Static?
Sheldon's essentially a power play bowler. Anything outside the power play, he can get smashed. But I think the concern with Sheldon is 1 year ago when he got his IPL contract, he was an elite power play bowler. Like, he was at the top of the top. But I think now with his fitness concerns or whatever, he hasn't been taking as many wickets in the power play. So once you get out of the power play, then I don't think Sheldon's improved from what he was before. So if he's not doing well in the power play, are there better options to fill in for him?
Right, and you well, that's why you're Static. You've hit the nail on the head for me, because I'd almost go as far as saying that I think Sheldon has, I don't want to say no value, that's harsh, but he's got limited value, very limited value outside of the power play. And sometimes I look at the St. Kitts bowling lineup, I'm like, if Sheldon doesn't get off in the power play, can you afford to, can you carry his remaining overs? Yes or no? And I don't think that's been tested properly yet. So I'm just mindful of some little pieces here and there. For St. Kitts. Just a few comments that some of you are throwing in there. So Mass says, yes, they've won 3 types of games already. Setting and defending after being in trouble, comfortably chasing down. Yeah, they've kind of done everything. Yeah, spot on. Coolio, sorry, says, the depth of the St. Kitts team, I don't see any runs total which they will struggle chasing, and I can't see them struggling to set decent totals. Yeah, because Fabian's not even had to do anything yet, which is worrying if I was other teams. And then Contact says, inject Trinidad losing into my veins. I'm tired of them winning all the time. We're going to get to Trinidad because I think there's a few talking points on Trinidad. But that St. Kitts, it's pretty obvious what to say about St. Kitts. They're top. No one's beaten them yet, so on and so forth.
No,
Believe
and
it or
also,
not. Go on, sorry, go. Let it go.
Yeah, I think Bravo, I think he said this before itself. This is a new challenge for him, and he's taking this seriously. Probably knows he doesn't have many years left in him in the CPL. He's moved from Trinidad, and he says he wants to take on this challenge. And you can see his expressions every game. He's animated after every wicket. So I think it's similar to what Pollard did to TKR, right? Once Pollard was at TKR, they had that winning mentality. And now that's what Bravo is also bringing to St. Kitts. They really want to win.
Yeah, and I think Bravo almost looks like he thinks that winning with this St. Kitts team, not that he needs to, but it's almost like he's almost treating it like this will cement my legacy. That I even went to another franchise and I got another franchise to win, and so on and so forth. So yeah, I totally agree with you on that. Believe it or not, people, the team currently in second place is actually Jamaica. Now, obviously, for those who follow Caribbean Cricket Podcast or who followed the previous episodes as far, you know I'm a Jamaican fan. We are second by virtue of the fact that the opening game against St. Lucia, the run rate victory was so huge that's why we're in second, because everyone else has got 2 points. But that run rate could well come in handy come the end. Similarly, that run rate could be why St. Lucia don't make it, because of how badly they were beaten. But whatever. Point is Jamaica is second. But this is our talking point out Jamaica. Which Jamaica will turn up for the rest of the tournament? Game 1, they smashed St. Lucia to smithereens. Everybody who is a six-hitter in that side turned up and was hitting sixes for fun. And, of course, Dre Russ did what Dre Russ does. Second game, against the stuttering Barbados, they limited, well, maybe it was two. I actually think it was too many runs. They limited Barbados to 161 for 5. At one point, Barbados were 82 for 5 in that game. And then Glenn Phillips and Ramon Reefer got too many runs, in my perspective. And maybe that's me being biased as a Jamaican fan, but for me, they got too many runs. But the bowling wasn't that terrible. Dre Russ had a stinker, but it wasn't that terrible. Okay, I think Carlos Brathwaite is injured at the moment. He's not bowling. Yeah. Now, the problem, I'm just going to read the scorecard from the Jamaica innings static. Walton, 3. Kanar Lewis, 10. Hyder Ali, 7. Rovman, 9. Dre Russ, 0. Pretorius, 15. The only people who scored were Brooks, 47 from 45 balls. Carlos Brathwaite, 29 from 27 balls. Here is the problem, Satik, and we said it before the tournament. If Jamaica aren't hitting sixes at will, they're not going to do anything else. Is that too simplistic when looking at the Jamaica side, or is that spot on?
No, it's actually spot on, because I don't see anyone apart from Brooks who can actually rotate strike. And Brooks is also very, very limited in that he has only one gear to his batting. So, yeah, that's a good way of putting it. And when they encounter tougher pitches like they did on that day against Barbados, they probably can't just go out there trying to hit sixes every ball, which they're going to do, but it's not going to come off every time. So they probably have to get as many wins as possible when they're on fresher pitches, right? So I think the next leg of tomorrow onwards, we're moving to the center pitch.
Yeah.
It'll be a fresh track. So
yeah,
when they're on flatter pitches, I think that's when they go all out, try to get as many wins as possible and not leave it for too late.
Yeah, and to be honest, I love that summation, because the issue for me is Jamaica don't have enough of an all-round game. So even if I take what you're saying, Static, let's say they get onto the new set of pitches, centre, it's flatter, they score. Brilliant. Then when they get onto the third pitch, it's flatter, they score. The problem is they don't have enough of an all-round game to adapt to anything else. And 2 games is too small of a sample size, and we both accept that, and maybe Jamaica will surprise us. But even as a Jamaican fan, even after we won that first game, I hope people remember that I said, don't take that to mean that that's going to be the norm for Jamaica. And then predictably in the second game, we went to what I think is the norm. Now, the only thing that would have got Jamaica out of that hole versus Barbados is if Dre Russ had done Dre Russ things. But this is the problem. When you have an elite player like Dre Russ, too often you're going to find yourself in a situation where you're just hoping for him to perform a miracle because the other players don't have a history of coming off regularly enough to not have to leave it to Dre Russ to try and try and get the team over the line. So our question is, which Jamaica will turn up for the rest of the tournament? Who knows? Who really knows? I still don't think they'll qualify for the Final Four, Static.
Yeah, I think Dre Russ is probably going to win them a couple of games here and there on his own bat. I think the other day they had 60 or 5 overs, and that pitch was wearing out, and he had a bad day, of course. But I think there'll be some other games in the tournament that he wins for them single-handedly. But it's about how that support cast comes around him, right? Does Haider Ali have the mettle to step up in a couple more games, perhaps? Can Canales keep going at the top? So I think it's that batting. The bowling is pretty stable. I think it's going to be around that 150 to 170 range. I don't think they're an elite bowling group, but they're not outright pathetic either. So it's probably going to be somewhere in the middle, and it's about whether their batting can reach that level.
Yeah, 100%. And like I say, it'll be interesting to see how they go over the next phase of games. Obviously, starting with Barbados again tomorrow. Mass, just to answer your question, Jermaine Blackwood. Everyone always asks this question about Jermaine Blackwood. Where is he, so on and so forth. But remember, he's always playing for West Indies. Whenever, not always, but more often than not, he's playing for West Indies when things like, I know, T20 drafts are going on and so on and so forth. Would you have been handy in this team? We haven't got a sample size for Jermaine Blackwood really in T20 cricket. So it's a bit of a moot point. Who knows? He's certainly not in this side this year. Currently in third place in CPL. Again, remember all these teams on net run rate, because they're all on 2 points, are TKR. Having played 3 games. They've only won 1. They've lost 2. How long before Trinbago find their feet, and should they be concerned? I'm not a Trinbago fan, although I tend to support them once Jamaica get knocked out. But their defeat in their last game, was it against St. Lucia? Yeah, St. Lucia.
Yeah, St. Lucia.
I was concerned by that defeat. It was I didn't catch all of it, but I caught their innings when they were batting. And I put something up on Twitter, Static, where I said, similar to what we were just talking about, Sheldon Cottrell, I said, outside of the power play, how much value does Lendl Simmons bring to a side? And the point I was trying to make to people is, if Lendl doesn't come off in the power play, I feel like he has no value to a batting side if he hasn't already got off to like a lightning start. He's not. I don't feel like he's able to make it up outside of the power play. So when I turned on, because I turned on when Simmons and Munro were batting and just stinking it up, just going nowhere with the bat, and I was like, "What's going on?" And then I tweeted the thing about Simmons, and then Munro's knock to me was disgusting, and that might be harsh, but if you bat pretty much all the way through an innings and face 47 balls, and you only make 40 runs. No, come on. That's the definition of match losing. So I'm not saying that Simmons wasn't a match losing, but Munro's was even worse because he was still there at the end, just doing nothing for 47 balls. Now, I guess the question, Static, as I hand over to you is, should we assume that Munro will come good, Simmons will come good, Narayan with the bat will come good, Seifert came good actually in that previous game. But similar to Jamaica, there's a part of me looking at TKR where they're like, so what, are you not just relying on Pollard to save you? There's something wrong with that batting lineup at the moment. How do you see it?
Yeah, as you said, I think, and as we discussed previously as well, they're reliant on Simmons handling the power play, and then Monroe deals with the middle overs, and then Pollard at the end. It's almost like a template they've stuck to for many years now, and keeps coming off for them. But this year, with Simmons not starting as well as they'd like, I think teams have figured out he's probably not gonna start as well against Spain. We saw St. Lucia go with Royal and Chase in the power play, and they
Mm,
completely tied him down.
mm,
And then Monroe, I think he was super aggressive in the first two games. I think he played bad shots and got out. So this
yeah.
time he just went to the other extreme of completely stinking out. And Pollard got out to a half. Again, Pollard's not going to come off every day. The same way we spoke about Dreras. If he needs 60 or 5 overs day in, day out, he's not going to live up to the expectations every single time. So,
Mm.
yeah, at this point, it's looking like they need one of Monroe or Simmons at least to come off. And I don't think we can assume they'd come off, but given their experience and given Pollard's probably not going to accept this standard of cricket, you assume they at least get to the playoffs somehow.
Right. So I'm glad you just mentioned that point. So for those who are like, oh yes, Trinbago are struggling this year, I would sound this note of caution. If you don't want Trinbago to win it this year, you'd probably want them to struggle near the end of the tournament. if they are struggling now, the worry is that they will get their act together the later the tournament goes on, and it would not surprise me to see them then enter the playoffs having got their act together. So that's the only sound of the cautionary note I'm going to sound here. We have to assume they're gonna come good, and actually a key player may well end up being Darren Bravo. In terms of, because he hasn't really, he was missing yesterday, or he was injured, didn't play in the last game. And maybe he's going to be the guy that has to knit there. He hasn't had a real at bat yet, and maybe he's going to be the one who has to knit it together, so to speak. But as Contact says, they lost the game, but they only lost 3 wickets, and that's unheard of. That's really unheard of in T20 cricket. To what they had to chase, I think 156, 157, something like that, and they had 7 wickets in the hutch and still lost. Yeah. It's just not good enough. And as Static says, Pollard's not going to put up with that. So you can well expect that things will be changing in the next few games. Yes, sorry, Contact. Also some good points. Yes, I think Rampal has bowled well. I'd said before the tournament, Rampal is an outside shot for the World Cup. Whether people want him there or not, he's an outside shot just because he's a clever bowler. It's not all about pace. And Hussain has been better than I expected him to be. So I give you that as well. In 4th place, also played 3, won 1, lost 2. The one that they lost was the last game before we went on this mini break in CPL, and that is, let me find their point, Guyana. They have changed their batting lineup every single game. The last game they played which they lost to St. Kitts, Hafiz opened. Hetmeyer came 3, which made more sense. Pooran came 4, which I don't think he wants to do. Santoki has been, if you haven't seen this, go on our Twitter handle. Santoki was tweeting about this today, saying that he was saying how he understands why Pooran hasn't been in the top 4, because they probably don't. He was saying that he wants to play as a finisher this year, but because Malik is stinking out the place, Pooran almost has to now go and bat 4. So Hetmeyer was 3, Pooran was 4. Brandon King came in at 5 because they don't, which was weird to see. I see you raise your eyebrows there, Static. I've got no concerns about Guyana's. Well, again, there's some things off the field that some people have alluded to. Not going to go there today. Generally speaking, I don't have much concern about Guyana's bowling, more often than not. But much like with Barbados, I'm not sure they really understand what they're doing. You shouldn't be 3 games into a tournament and you're still trying to work out the way you're going to approach innings. What's your take on it, Static?
Yeah, so I can somewhat understand why Brandon dropped down, because he's been very poor against the new ball for the last, I don't know, since he got picked for the West Indies. That's been
Yeah.
So you can somewhat understand why he went down. But Hafiz made 70 or 59.
Yeah.
How do you play 59 balls and just make 70 when you're the set batsman? I think that was as bad as Monroe's. Probably not as obvious, but 70 or 59? No, that's not on. And Hetman is doing well for them, which is a good sign. But as you said, Malik probably has no role in the team right now.
So
And
then, hold on, pause there, Static. So Contacts put, with Hafiz Malik, Hetmeyer in, I understand why they're sending Puran 6 and 7. He has the most power. And yes, so I agree with the last point that Kings completely lost away. So how would you deal with their batting order? Because Santoki said to me today that the problem is Guyana had an openers problem last year. They still have the same problem this year. And then they have a bunch of middle order batsmen and no one or middle to top. Basically got too many batsmen that are doing the same thing. And in Malik and Hafiz, they probably have two. What am I trying to say here? Malik and Hafiz do the same thing.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't be playing both, but they have to.
Yeah.
Like I don't know what their solution is here. Go in, sorry.
Yeah, because if Malik and Hafiz are going to bat up, the same thing that happened in the first game is going to happen again.
Yeah.
They're going to stink up the place, and Puran's going to have 5-6 balls to bat. So I'd rather send up Puran and ask him to control the innings and hope for the best. I just hope one of Puran and Hetmeyer, one of the set batsmen, for the end so they can actually slog. I wouldn't save up one of them as a designated finisher. Just hope that one of them gets through those middle overs and is set at the death. So that's probably what I would do at this point. But they dropped Ashley Ned for Anthony Bramble.
Right. So,
where do we start?
And maybe, do you know what? I'm going to have to go there then, Static. So Sweet By says, get into the off-field issues of the Warriors. So, do you know what? The number one off-field issue that I'm going to get into is exactly what Static said. What was the justification to bring in Bramble? When I saw Bramble's name, I assumed he was going to open. That's why I assumed they brought him in. I was like, oh, you're going to ask him to pinch hit at the top. And then he didn't. So basically, you took out a bowler in there who's pretty economical, generally speaking, to bring in someone to be a specialist wicketkeeper in 2020 cricket. So there is an issue to me about what was the justification for that team selection. Can you make sense of it, Static? Because I can't.
No, Ashley Ned bowled well in the first 2 games. He's a left-arm spinner in the team. I know Hemraj is there as a part-time spinner, but he hasn't bowled a single ball in the tournament. So, I mean, they're already not using their entire batting resources, right? Puran's played only a handful of balls, and even yesterday, Malik didn't even bat. Brandon batted 4 balls or something like that. So, why do you need an additional specialist batsman? And they actually abandoned that Odin Smith experiment. He played a 7-ball duck when they tried to do it the second time. So they abandoned that. So they almost have a slow finisher down the order in Odin. So unless Puran didn't want to keep for whatever reason.
Yeah. So that's what Sweet Pie is saying. Puran, maybe Kieran, and hadn't considered that in fairness. I don't understand why he wouldn't want to, but that whole game yesterday, whenever I can't remember what day we're on now. Was it yesterday? Yesterday was bizarre. And for those who are in the chat saying off the field issues, what I would suggest you do is go on Twitter and type in Guyana. And you will find some threads. You will find some threads about some worries that people had about that game yesterday. All I will say about that game and that thread is this, and Static and I have spoken off the record about this. Either everyone was in on it or no one was. To me personally, Static, it can't be one name and that's it. That doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. So it was either everyone or no one, and that's all I'll say. That's all I'll say on that for now.
Yeah, and leaving out all those issues, we probably don't want to get into it now, but actually it was Sherfain who took them down last game, and Sherfain was the only finisher on the squad for the last 2 years. They decided to get rid of him. Yeah, and that's exactly what came to bite them back. Sherfain actually finished the game last time. Yeah, exactly.
So I'm not. Guyana have some issues. going forward. They need to work out that batting order. I'm not, like I say, I don't think bowling's going to be too much of an issue, but the batting order they have to work out because it's going to continue to be their Achilles heel. Or, as I think ultimately, Static, what you said is what it is. You basically, at this stage, if I'm Guyana, Hetmai comes 3, Pooran comes 4, and you basically have to hope it comes off. That I don't see any other viable option other than that. And then if it doesn't come off, if it's king at 5 or whatever it is that they're doing, they then have to just hope that maybe somebody can do something. But yeah, Pooran as a finisher, no, not with this team. That's not going to work.
The pace bowling is a bit off because Niall and Odin Smith haven't bowled as well as it. Like Odin did well in the first game, but he hasn't been able to replicate that. Naveen's been pretty bad.
But to be honest, though, Statics, in speaking on that, this was the concern before the tournament, though. I remember everyone looking at, even Santoki was saying, everyone was looking at the Guyana team going, okay, yeah, the spin's top notch. We know what's going to happen. Imran's going to come on after the power play. He's going to get 2 or 3 wickets. Like, no one was looking at the spin bowlers going, okay, there's an issue there. And we were like, if their spin bowling comes off, they're probably going to win matches. But then it was like, what about their pacers? And predictably, 3 games in, we're still looking at their pacers going, wait a minute. And because Naveen's not been at his best yet, that makes it even more of an issue with regards to their paces. I'm surprised that Romario Shepherd's only played the 1 game, if I'm honest.
Yeah, apparently he has a toe injury.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. That might explain that then. Undoubtedly, we'll come back to Guyana in further episodes. But on to another team who's got an issue, Barbados. Now, Barbados have won 1, lost 2 as well. Barbados can count them. I'm not just saying this as a Jamaican, but Barbados can count themselves very lucky that their 3rd game was Jamaica. If they had played another team, I think they might have lost again. But if you wanted to stop a losing rot, Jamaica was the right team to play at that point in time. And they probably should be glad that they've got Jamaica next tomorrow, so they can go to win 2, 1-2, lost 2 out of 4. I'm not concerned about Barbados' bowling. I think Mohamed Amir's been good. O'Shane Thomas has been good. Hayden found a bit of form versus Jamaica in the last game. Jason, been a bit up and down for me. I'm a bit concerned about his bowling. I'm not going to lie. But they made a good change. So we had said in episode 1 and episode 2 that we were worried about Barbados' batting order, Static, but Game 3, they made a change. Ramon Reefer came in. Who did they take out?
Ashley Nurse.
Ashley Nurse, right. Which was brilliant because you and I had said, what's Ashley Nurse's point in the team? Like, he wasn't bowling a lot of overs. Their batting order has an issue. So actually, that was a brilliant decision to bring in Reefer, who can bowl probably more effectively than Ashley Nurse, and more importantly, can also bat. Now, their batting order, I'm just trying to find that game. Their batting order for the win against Jamaica changed once again. Yeah. So it was Charles and Hope opening. Mayers came 3, which in fairness is what you and I had said. We had both said that stick to either him or Holder coming up and stick. So they changed it this time. Mayers came ahead of Holder this time. So Mayers came 3, Phillips came 4. Holder came 5, Azam Khan came 6, Reefer 7. Now, to me, Static, and you go after I've said this, they still don't have the right batting order. Even that's not the right batting order. As far as if I was picking a team, that's not how I'm constructing. Azam Khan should not become in 6. I understand that they have issues with probably trying to fit him in higher. And even though Phillips came off and he got 56 and 46, I'm not convinced he should become in 4. Not in that side. What do you think, Static? What do you think about their batting order?
No, look, I think, again, Azam Khan and Glenn Phillips are probably the best batters in their team, at least, right? So you can't have them coming at 4 or 6. I think both should be given the responsibility to control the innings. And by that, Phillips has to open like he's done for Jamaica. Whether he failed in the first 2 games or not, doesn't matter because he's a class player, he'll come good. Azam Khan has to bat at 4. So you have to work around that. whether that
Wait,
means
stop. So you saying first things first, Khan 4, and then work your team around that.
Phillips opens.
Phillips, yeah,
As
sorry.
I'm at 4 or 5, and you work
Right.
around that. Yeah.
Okay.
If you lose early wickets, you probably want to hold Azam back.
Mm.
But in most situations, you lose only 2 wickets in the power play, and then once you get out of the power play, Azam's immediately in.
Mm.
So Charles opens with Phillips. Then I'd have Hope.
Yeah.
If they want to get rid of Hope and bring in Graves, I'm fine with that. And then one of Azam or Mayers floats up. And then once you bat Azam at 4, you hope he controls innings. Else you drop down to Mayers, Holder, Reefer, etc. All the all-rounders.
Does Jason Holder have to accept that maybe he shouldn't be promoting himself in this side? Is that part of the problem, that Jason has put himself at like what 4 and then sometimes 3, and then maybe Jason has to say, you know what, in this side my role is to be a finisher or something. Whether that's his, I'm not saying that's his game, but I'm saying for the sake of the batting lineup, maybe he has to look at himself and say, stop promoting himself. Because I think that part of it's almost like sometimes I look at Jason, I'm like, bro, you can't be everything in this team. Like, you don't have to come 3. You don't have to. That's not necessarily the best thing for your team. Is that harsh? Do you get where I'm trying to come from here?
No, I think it was different to last year. Last year, we wanted Jason to come up and control the innings. But now that they've got Phillips, they've got Azam Khan as 2 overseas batsmen. Jason doesn't need to do everything now. So one of Jason or Kyle Mayers, have to say, probably don't need to bat in the top 5, although that's arguably the best role. So let the specialist top 5 guys do their job, and then Jason probably slots in somewhere around 7 and finishes the innings as he used to do before. So yeah, I think it's not harsh. I think that's a good description.
And loads, I see loads of, there must be lots of Barbados fans in there, because there's loads of comments on how people would construct the Barbados team. I'll just take one. Nathan Greenwich says, Hope Charles, Phillips at 3. Interesting, actually. Whatever you do with Hope, if he plays, he has to be 1 or 3. Or sorry, he's got to be in the top. No matter what, if Hope is playing, he's got to be in that 1, 2, or 3. So I get that. Azam 4. Mayers, Holder, Pereira, Reefer. I'd have Reefer before Pereira personally. And that's the other issue I've got. Should Pereira even be in the team?
Yeah, it's interesting. When Lintott becomes available, they can only play 4 overseas. So do they bring in the second spinner, or do they go with Pereira? So.
Do you think Pereira adds value?
In 2021? No.
Because based on the games I've seen so far, every time I've seen whether it's the bat or the ball, I'm like, what are you bringing to this side? I don't understand. I don't get it. So, like you say, maybe once Lintott turns up, maybe that's it. They're like, okay, you're only actually playing because we're waiting for our other overseas player to turn up. I don't know, but for me, Pereira, no, I'm sorry.
No, and it makes it easier for them because they dropped Ashley, so they're actually looking for a second spinner.
Yes,
and Hayden hasn't been able to bowl 4 overs. So
and
in fact, when Lintott becomes available, it's an obvious swap for me.
Yeah, good point. And actually, the other thing about sorry, was it? Yeah, contact. I've been thinking the same thing as well. You know. But the thing with Pereira as well, and that's why it was good they dropped Nurse. When you have someone like Pereira in the team, you're basically signaling to the other side, here comes your junk over that you're waiting for. It's like that's not even rocket science. If I'm a opposition and I know you've got Pereira, I know that you're gonna have to bowl him at least 1 over, probably 2. And if you do, he's surely getting targeted. So you're playing into the opposition's hands by playing Pereira. But anyways, that's Barbados. And then, of course, I think we've only got one team left. It must be St. Lucia. And then at the moment in last place, but they've only played 2 games, 1-1, lost 1, which is the Kings. Yes, Dino's here. Yes, big up Dino. I didn't even know you knew that we had, if it's who I think it actually is. Dino, make sure you come on one of these. By the way, I was talking about you today, actually. If you don't know who Dino is, people, go on the YouTube channel and check out the chat I did with Dino about performance analysis and data and use of it in West Indies cricket. Big chat. You need to watch that. It's essential watching. But last team static, St. Lucia. So they've played 2, 1-1, lost 1. They were humiliated against Jamaica. You and I came on after that game and said, don't read too much into that. St. Lucia are a much better team than that. And I think we both kind of said, let's see how they go. Because I still have St. Lucia as being in my final 4 no matter what. Obviously, in their next game, they then beat Trinidad. Now, on one hand, we've raised concerns about what Trinidad are up to and are Trinidad going to get better? But at the end of the day, St. Lucia still held on for the win. What do you make of the Kings so far, Static?
Yeah, I think only 2 games, not much to read into. They got blasted in their first game, but we put that aside as an anomaly. But I think overall they're a good team. They have a good coach. They have a good captain who hasn't actually got used to the squad yet, but I think he will at some point. And I think they used matchups very well in that game against Trinidad. So I think it'll come together for them as they go forward. It wasn't the most professional performance against Trinidad, but they should get their act together because we saw good signs. I thought they used Royal well at the top, and then Wahab was saved for only death bowling, which worked out fine. I think there are a few concerns. Chemo has looked off in the couple of games. I don't know why Obed McCoy was dropped. Was he injured?
Yeah, so I was going to ask you. I have to assume, and I'm hoping that, well, not hoping, either Obed was injured or they're managing Obed. Remember, Obed always has to be managed quite carefully.
Yeah.
So I just assume that because you don't drop Obed McCoy. No way.
No, you don't.
Not if you're going to be in your Arsenal. Can I just touch on Chemo for a bit? Because I was hyping Chemo. I went on Jamaican radio before the tournament started, and like the host was like, "Oh, who are some players that we should watch out for in this tournament?" And I said, "I'm watching out for Chemo Paul. This is his big comeback." But with the ball in the first 2 games, it's kind of not been a big comeback. Chemo Paul is still my guy. I still think he is a super talented cricketer, but it's not really working out for him with the ball thus far. What do you think's going on for Chemo, Static?
I think it's been an 8-month injury break now. Yeah, so I don't think he's at full pace yet. He'll probably get into it as we go further in the tournament. But again, it's the same issue as it was when he used to play for the West Indies. Too many slow balls. He's not getting that Yorker in as much as he should. But we know he has a good Yorker. He has a sharp bouncer as well. So hopefully once we get in, he gets more games. He starts putting in better performances. But yeah, I think if they rotate between Chemo, Obed, I thought Alzari was decent in the last game. He bowled 1 bad over, but given what we've seen from Alzari in previous seasons with St. Kitts, that was an improved performance. And Wahab will come good at some point. I'm not too concerned about Wahab. He actually bowled a very good last over against Trinidad with a clutch over. So I think overall, I think Chemo has enough support bowlers around him to find his feet without being in the hot seat too often.
Do you know one player who has surprised me? And he did last year, and he's continued the form again this year. Roston Chase. Now, last year he was very impressive for the Kings when they got to the final, and I remembered watching it, thinking, "Huh?" Like you'd look at Roston, and you'd look at his bowling and be like, "Yeah, you're going to get taken to the cleaners in T20 cricket," but no. And even with the bat, I'm not saying he's any massive striker of the ball. It's more that he times things very well. Why do you think Roston is working out in T20 cricket? I can't get my head around it.
No, I was trying to make sense of it the other day because someone asked me, can Roston actually bowl this way in T20? And I thought he was actually giving Rakeem advice on how to bowl. What he was saying is, this pitch is giving us enough turns, so bowl it back of a length, get it to turn, and don't bowl it in the batsman's arc. And if you read my article on Narayan, if you
Yeah.
guys have read it, you'll see that one of the key points in that was you in T20, you don't bowl too full because the batsman gets on the front foot and slugs you. So as opposed to Rakeem, who was bowling too full at times, Roston made the adjustment and he's bowling back full length. So it's actually not as hard to, it's not actually as easy to get him away as you would think it is, right? And I think he understands what he has to do with the bat. When they were 80 for 5, he was the obvious guy who would get them to a par total. So even though 30 of 25 doesn't seem like those massive T20 innings, he knows what he has to do in that situation. And if they're 120 for 2 and he has to hit out, he'll do that. We saw that last season as well. There were days when Rakeem and Fletcher got them off to good starts, and all he had to do was hit out or get out. So I think he understands his role in the team very well, which is important to being a good player. Is he a West Indies contender? Probably not, because he doesn't have the raw skills to be a top tier player. But I think role definition and just game smarts is taking him where he is right now.
Love that. And do you know what? That's been the best explanation for me from anybody in terms of understanding how Roston Chase could possibly be doing well in T20 cricket. But like we say, it's a small sample size for the Kings so far. They've only played 2 games. They play tomorrow against TKR. And Bob, sorry, so those who are wondering what the games are tomorrow, the early game is Kings versus TKR, and then the night game is Barbados versus, or the Royals versus the Tallawahs. And what's interesting, even as I say those 2 games, Static, and what I've loved about CPL this year is because TKR aren't the obvious winners.
Yeah.
It's actually, when you look at the games, you're like, oh, I don't know. Oh, I actually don't know. Like, so when I say to you Kings versus TKR, I'm like, I don't know who's going to win that tomorrow. And that's what we wanted. After last year's tournament, we wanted a tournament where it's like, oh, I can't tell you what's going to happen. I really don't know at this stage. And the next rest day is Friday. So it'll be interesting when we get to Friday and you and I talk again in terms of a big talk. It'll be interesting to see where we're at now, because by Friday there should be enough of a sample size to be able to be like, okay, most teams have played about 5 games now, or maybe 3, 4 or 5 games. Who's looking like they're probably not going to make it? Like we should be starting to see that by now. The last thing I'll say, to see if there's any further comments. Yeah, I did, Contact. I did see this. I think Alzari gave him a send-off when Wahab got Pollard out. Alzari was muttering something under his throat. Enough for Pollard to hear it anyways. I was like, okay, that's your ODI captain, but I guess it's all good.
Once you get him out, it's all fine. You don't rile him up before he's out.
But we're gonna kind of bring this one to an end. It's longer than usual, but that's because we haven't done one for 3 days, and we wanted to kind of bring everybody up to speed in terms of where we're at. We should more than likely have one tomorrow, possibly. We'll discuss it, but that would be looking at the Kings versus TKR and then looking ahead to Barbados versus Jamaica. But we'll decide and let you know either way. But as ever, thank you everybody for jumping on. Static probably doesn't know this, but the first episode we did, I looked this morning and that's over 1K views on YouTube. So I don't know who's watching. I don't know who's sending out the links and this, that, and the other. But thank you everybody that's been jumping on. Tell your friends, tell your people, jump in the live, so on and so forth. Click the subscribe button, share, follow Static on Twitter, etc. But we'll be back. Thank you, everybody. That's been Late Nights at Warner Park, episode 3. Love everyone in the comments for feeding us with talking points as ever, and we shall see you soon. Peace.